Welcome to an episode of Outside the Box. It's actually been a long time because I don't necessarily have a lot of things in the rest of the industry I feel like talking about. However, something interesting has been cropping up over the past few days, and that is the supposed market cap value of games as a service, particularly at EA and Activision. Reportedly, the combined market value of those games as a service aspects of their company are $93 billion. To put this in perspective, about 5-6 years ago, Activision was around $10 billion. Now they're at $60 billion in terms of valuation just for this single year. And EA went from $4 billion 5-6 years ago to $33 billion today. Again, these are estimates because only EA and Activision have the exact figures, and this is the kind of stuff they don't want to share. They'll share how much value their company is, but they don't want to share what parts of their company are creating that value. And this is huge because games as a service is essentially the direction AAA games have been going of late. It's very difficult, almost a misnomer, to find third-party AAA games that don't have microtransactions, don't have day one DLC, don't have loot boxes in them, or all of the above, or a mix of that stuff. And even like Starlink Battle for Atlas that recently came on the Switch, I mean, while it doesn't have a lot of day one DLC or stuff like that, it piecemeals out a bunch of the content at the beginning for like microtransaction kind of stuff. You don't necessarily need those things to beat the game, but they still exist. They're still there. They're still there for you to spend money on. Now, that's more of a lighter side, actually, and that obviously deals with Ubisoft, which is another company that actually participates in this, but we aren't seeing as big of a jump in valuation for them as we are for Activision and EA, especially in the midst of Call of Duty's Black Ops 4 coming out, which is the biggest games-as-a-service style Call of Duty yet. And obviously, we know EA has been doing games as a service stuff forever. In fact, there was a massive backlash over Battlefront 2, and it actually got so bad that Belgium banned loot boxes because of EA, but EA is refusing to remove them and now fighting them in court to get the right for them to have loot boxes in games back. So we're in an interesting conundrum here, and a lot of people have been wondering what my thoughts are on this because I've been on record several times saying that I think video games are too cheap. I don't think $60 represents the value of today's AAA games when it comes to the number of people working on it combined with the budget being spent on them. However, my one caveat to saying that games should be more than $60, say $70, $80 or whatever as a base price, is that we remove all the other ways companies are making money off these games. And if we're not going to remove those ways that money is being made, then games themselves should actually get cheaper for the base entry level. And yes, I've seen the Jim Sterling videos. I know I'm talking base entry level because a lot of AAA games now come with a $60, an $80, $100, and sometimes more versions of the game at launch. And I mean, technically that did happen with Breath of the Wild. However, you were just getting like physical goods for spending more money. They didn't change what the base game was. The game you bought for $60 for Breath of the Wild at launch was the same as getting like the $150, Master's Edition and all that stuff. Like there was no difference in the actual game. So kudos to Nintendo to just offering you optional physical items, but not offering people more game content. That being said, I think that there is an issue. I think games as a service is not going to go away, not anytime soon. It's true, the AAA industry in particular, heck, indie games technically as well in some cases, are going to milk the hell out of games as a service because we have continued as consumers to show that we support such notions. Not just in buying the games. I don't think purchasing a game in that of itself is the big issue, but buying the microtransactions, buying the loot boxes, and all that stuff. It used to be that games as a service was a very particular thing. You were paying for an ongoing service, like your Xbox Lives and your Nintendo Switch Onlines, or like World of Warcraft, where you pay, $10-15 a month. Actually, most people pay cheaper than that to buy the year pass. But whatever, you're paying for access to those servers over and over again, the maintenance and the continual adding of content. And what they do with World of Warcraft is actually, to me, almost better than what happens with a lot of other games. But that used to be what games as a service are. Now games as a service is simply, look, you want to look cool, you want to have the best weapons, you want to have the best this, you want to be in the in-crowd in Fortnite, then you better buy that battle pass, you better buy all those costumes, you better buy, it's all optional. That's usually the defense, it's all optional. And I understand that defense, if you're someone who buys the game but then doesn't buy that stuff, I don't think you're part of the problem, by the way, if you download a free-to-play game or you buy a game and you don't buy the stuff. But there's plenty of people that are buying this stuff that are telling EA, Activision, Ubisoft, even Nintendo in some cases, that what you are doing is A-okay. Keep cutting content out or keep releasing content for ridiculous prices. Don't give people, just nickel and dime consumers as much as you can to milk us for all that we're worth. And this is the kind of thing that can lead to the crash of the video game industry. Now, no, I don't think Activision, EA, Ubisoft, Nintendo, all these companies that do this stuff are going to be crashing and going away. And yes, I realize Nintendo's inclusion in this is a little bit on the lighter side, more to do with their mobile games and just a couple games on their systems like Fire Emblem Echoes. I'd argue Super Smash Bros. DLC. I know some of you guys love that stuff and you're all like, yeah, okay, paying $8 a character. But I mean, realistically, you're getting a lot less content in comparison to the price of the game. I know people like disagreeing with me on this stuff. It's fine. Feel the way you want to feel. I can't stop you from spending your money on individual characters in Smash Bros. I can't stop you from spending money on gacha mechanics in Fire Emblem Heroes. I can't stop you from buying Leaf tickets in Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. I can't stop you from spending money on Madden Ultimate Team and FIFA Ultimate Team and Fortnite. I can't stop anyone from spending money on this stuff. But to me, it's just not a good direction for the industry. And unfortunately, this is a case where you can't trust companies to police themselves because clearly they are just going to milk us for all that we're worth. While I feel video games today have actually gotten better, bigger, and adding a lot more content in than we used to get in the golden age of gaming. What was it, the 90s, early 2000s, whatever age you ended up growing in is usually the age you consider the golden age. I think that the direction gaming is heading in is one that's unsustainable. And I've talked in the past about, my argument for increasing the pricing of games came from the idea that there were studios that didn't participate in these practices that ended up closing. I'm not talking about the studios EA closes. When EA closes a Visceral Games or something like that, they're not closing it because that studio isn't profitable. They're closing it because that studio isn't profitable enough to meet EA's margins. Whereas we've seen other studios just close, period, because they're not profitable over the years. Today, it's a little less common. Today, when companies are reaching that tipping point of being profitable or not being profitable, either a company comes in and buys them out, like a Microsoft has been doing lately with certain companies, or they just refuse to be bought out, Platinum Games, and they just keep trying to make that next deal, that next partnership to continue to make the games they want to make while remaining independent. And kudos to Platinum Games. They've somehow survived this long, despite the fact that there have been many times documented in Platinum Games' past where they have flirted with being close to being bankrupt and then bounced back. So kudos to them for wanting to flirt with that line. It feels almost like me as a YouTuber and a content creator, right? I flirt with that line of having enough money to get by and not enough money to get by, but I keep skirting around having to stop making content altogether. So I feel like Platinum Games and me are very relatable in that sense. Fighting against the man, as it were. But I think that this kind of sucks. And what this shows is that EA, Activision, and other companies like them have no regards for just making money. Making money is not good enough anymore. All they care about are their investors. All they care about is milk. Like whenever they talk about caring about gamers, all this talk, all these goodwill gestures to care about us are just all about rebuilding up consumer confidence in their products so we continue to buy them and continue to give passes to all the, like when there will be no loot boxes in Anthem. That's great, but that doesn't take care of the fact that 90% of your AAA offerings still have loot boxes in them, right? Like, it doesn't show that you're learning. It just shows that you're trying to get goodwill with this one game while continuing to make massive profits off of everything else. And this is where I start to lean towards Jim Sterling a little bit when he talks about how games don't need to be more expensive. While I think they should be more expensive, that's with the caveat they remove all this other money-grubbing ways. They're not going to do that, and since they're not going to do that, basically, if you are a AAA $60 game and you offer microtransactions and loot boxes or one or the other, you should be like Fortnite. It should be free to play. At least when you're free to play, the people who don't want to spend money on the microtransactions and loot boxes get to enjoy the game for free. Everyone else can go and blow all their money all they want. And I think microtransactions, loot boxes, stuff are more acceptable in free-to-play games. Even on the AAA level, I would argue Fortnite as an online multiplayer game is pretty much a AAA game. You can argue Warframe is probably up there now. Arena of Valor is probably up there now as a MOBA. although MOBAs themselves have kind of always worked in that free-to-play market these days anyways. It's a mess, right? I think we can all agree what's happening in the video game industry right now is a hot mess. And the reality is that the only way it's going to stop is when EA and Ubisoft and Activision and all these companies kind of crash in on themselves. Because what's happening right now is every single year they're trying to push the valuations and the money they make higher and higher and higher and higher. And eventually there's going to be a tipping point. All of us don't have the time to invest in every single one of these games coming out. Because what happens with games as a service is they're trying to get you to invest in the game's long haul. So you don't just buy the game and play it for a month, you buy it and play it for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4. They want to keep that going, but there's only so much time and so many consumers out there that could do this. You know, there's people still playing Destiny 2. There's people still playing the original Destiny. There's people still playing FIFA from last year. And this is why you see online servers get shut down to force people into the newer games. But in general, what happens is gamers are going to run out of time to support so many different games as a service games that these companies are going to stop raising in valuation, start sinking, investors are going to get mad, more studios are going to be closed, and before you know it, we're going to be left with EA Sports and EA Sports. It's in the game of making money. Like, it's baffling to me what's going to happen. EA themselves isn't going to shut down, but they're going to be closing a ton of studios. Not now. I'd say like 5 years down the road is probably when we hit that tipping point, and then we're going to see a ton of studio closings at EA. It's probably going to happen at Activision as well. I mean, I'm almost surprised they keep World of Warcraft going. They have other games that are way more profitable than World of Warcraft at this point. I'm mind-boggled right now at what these numbers are showing, what they're proving, and the direction of the industry. I've talked about how I don't like this microtransaction DLC crap in games that we spend all this money on to get into initially. I don't like how like the $60 version is now becoming the base version of the game, and then you have to spend $80, $100 or more to get extra content in your games. Console exclusive content is kind of hit or miss with me, but just in terms of you spend $80 or $100 and you get like more, like Starling Battle for Atlas is a prime example. If you got the $80 digital deluxe version, you have more stuff in your game than I do for $60. If you bought the $75 physical version, I have more stuff in my game for $60 digitally than you do physically. And again, this is a minor, this is the smaller toys to life issue in comparison to what's happening at Activision and EA. But man, guys, this is where we're at in the industry. And as consumers, I don't think there's much we can do about it. This isn't me accepting defeat. This is me accepting that these companies are going to crash and burn on their own. We don't need to do anything else. We can continue to enjoy the games we're enjoying. Heck, if you're someone that buys a Call of Duty, buys a Battlefield, buys these games, and you put your money into them, fine. Keep doing that. I'm not going to tell you to stop enjoying content and spending money on what you want, but just know what the direction the industry is going is not actually sustainable. There's always a tipping point. And this is true in anything that seems to be going this well. The American economy, as an example, has been going really, really well, like during the late 90s, but that always means it's due for a crash. It's due for a regression. And we're at a point now where I don't think we've reached the top of the mountain for games as a service, but we are going to reach a point where it's going to crash in on itself and the entire industry is going to change. And I know a lot of you guys are probably waiting for that. The scary thing is when it crashes in on itself, what's next? What are they going to do now to make money? Because companies don't like losing all this value. These top valuations, you think EA wants to go back down to $4 billion from 33, or Activision wants to go back down from 10 from 60? No, they want all your money, not just a little. So when this crashes in, the scary part isn't just the studios we're going to lose along the way. The scary part is, what are they going to do now to get back to those profit levels if games as a service is no longer viable on the whole across all of gaming, only for specific games? I don't know. All I know is I'm glad that Nintendo, at least for the most part, avoids a lot of these practices in most of their games so far on Switch. I think they're going to start participating in these practices more and more over time, not just in their mobile space. I think we see it at times with their console games. I'm really hoping Fire Emblem Three Houses doesn't start like pay-gating content day one. That's really bothers me when they did that with Echoes. I'm of mind that the industry should just be happy I think, making money and being a profitable billion-dollar industry versus needing to be 100, 200, 300, 400, $1 trillion industry like they're trying to make it into. Imagine that you went to movies and right in the middle of your movie, not only was there a commercial, they said, hey, thanks for paying, $15 to go to this movie. Can you please deposit $2 more to continue? And a lot of times in gaming, that's kind of what it feels like. And thank gosh, all movies have done is increase the price of the tickets. If they would just increase the price of entry for games and leave all this other crap out, companies can continue to be massively profitable without feeling like you're gouging consumers at every turn. But you know what? Just because that's the direction I want it to go doesn't mean the direction it's going to go. The industry is what it is, and I'm very curious to hear your guys' thoughts on these greedy, money-grubbing practices. Let's just call them what they are, down in the comments below. Do you happen to like these practices? I've seen some people defend loot boxes. I've seen some people defend microtransactions and DLC. I actually want to hear your guys' remarks defending it, your remarks against it. Obviously, a lot of you guys out there are like FEA or Activision, but we don't need these games on Switch. It's not really about what we need. It's about what's actually happening in the industry. When is it going to crash? I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Anyways, I'm Nathaniel Gents from Nintendo Prime, and this has been an episode of Outside the Box, one we haven't had in forever. Sorry about that. I just haven't felt this inspired for an Outside the Box episode in a long time, and it felt right to talk about this as an Outside the Box episode because most of these games, as a service games, at least the AAA $60 plus games, are not actually on Switch right now. We have some taste with NBA 2K19 and FIFA, but for the most part, we're not seeing the larger base of this. So a lot of the games we're playing on Switch don't have this issue, but it is something that is seeping into Switch. It's seeped into everything in our lives when it comes to video games, from our phones to tablets. Obviously, they have like the same sort of games, to the Switch, to Xbox, to PlayStation, to PC. It's everywhere. It's not going away. So what's next? Anyways, folks, I'm Nathaniel Gents from Nintendo Prime. If you like this video, you know what to do. And if you dislike the video, hit that dislike button. Subscribe for more content, and I'll catch all of you guys in the next one.